A few years ago, some friends and I decided to take advantage of a long 5-day weekend and go camping up in the North Georgia mountains. There were 5 of us, 2 guys, 3 girls, and we were pretty well prepared. My buddy Jake was an Army vet and knew his way around the outdoors, and I'd done a fair bit of hiking and hunting myself. Between us, we had everything: a 10-person tent, a propane stove and grill, fold-up cots, even a portable shower. We were ready to live in the woods for a few days. We left Wednesday afternoon, parked the truck in a small town, and hiked in to find a good spot. The first few miles were normal. The air smelled clean, the trail was clear, and everyone was in good spirits. But when we hit a small clearing about 4 or 5 miles in, things changed fast. It was a little open area with a pond, or maybe a small lake, in the middle. As soon as we stepped out of the trees, everything went dead quiet. No birds, no crickets, not even the wind. It was like someone had hit mute on the world. Jake and I exchanged a look, both thinking the same thing: predator nearby. We drew our handguns just in case. Georgia's got its share of coyotes, and I've heard of mountain lions up north, though I'd never seen one myself. While we were scanning the tree line, Jake suddenly grabbed my arm. "There," he whispered, and nodded across the pond. On the far side of the water, maybe 150 yards away, stood a woman. She was at the edge of the trees, facing our direction, but not moving. It was hard to tell much about her from that distance. She looked pale, long dark hair, wearing something dark. I assumed she lived nearby, maybe a local out for a walk, and we decided to keep moving. But when I looked back over my shoulder as we entered the woods again, she was gone. The sounds of the forest came back the moment we stepped under the trees. It was like someone flipped the world back on. We didn't say anything to the others about it. We didn't want to freak them out. We hiked another couple miles before stopping to make camp. It was getting late, and we didn't want to be setting up in the dark. We got the tent up, got a fire going, cracked open some beers, and settled in. The vibe was good again. One of the girls, Jess, was someone I'd been flirting with for a while, and after a few beers she asked me to help her fix something in the tent. We went inside, started fooling around, and after a minute she froze. I asked what was wrong, and she whispered, "Listen." It just got really quiet. I hadn't noticed until she said it, but she was right. No insects, no wind, nothing. Just total silence. We got dressed fast and went back out to the fire. The others were laughing and talking like nothing was wrong. They joked that we took our time fixing the tent, and we laughed it off, but Jess and I kept looking around. The woods felt heavier somehow. The next morning, we found the propane stove had been turned on overnight and emptied the whole canister. None of us had touched it. We figured maybe someone bumped the knob, but it was weird. The second morning, some of our stuff was missing. A lantern that had been by the fire was gone, Jess's sweatshirt too. We assumed we'd misplaced them, but everyone looked uneasy. Later that day, we hiked upriver looking for a waterfall we'd read about online. It was a warm day, sun coming through the trees, everything normal, until suddenly it wasn't. The woods went dead silent again. Jake nudged me and pointed up toward the ridge next to the river. Through the trees, I saw her again. Same woman, same dark clothes, standing perfectly still. I couldn't tell if she was looking at us, but I could feel it. Jake told the girls he thought he saw a mountain lion and was going to scare it off. He climbed the hill, made a ton of noise, and came back about 10 minutes later. He said, "All good, it's gone." But when we were walking again, he leaned close to me and said, "She wasn't there when I got up top." We found the waterfall, and the girls decided to go swimming, and honestly, that calmed everyone down. The rest of the afternoon felt normal again. When we got back to camp, our stuff was a mess. It wasn't destroyed or anything, but food was scattered, one of the cots was flipped, and some bags were open. We told the girls it was probably raccoons. Jake and I both slept with our guns that night. I woke up in the middle of the night because Jess was squeezing my arm so hard it hurt. I turned toward her and she shushed me. The tent was completely silent again. I looked across and saw Jake sitting halfway up, his head turning slowly like he was listening. Nobody said a word. We stayed like that for hours, just waiting for something to happen, until the sky started to lighten. At sunrise, Jake and I didn't even have to talk about it. We told everyone to pack up. The hike out felt like a dream. The woods stayed silent almost the entire time, except for the sound of our footsteps. At one point, I thought I saw someone between the trees just for a second. Jess was gripping my hand so tight I knew she saw it too. We didn't go near the lake on the way back. We just kept moving until the trees thinned out and we could see the town again. The whole hike out took maybe half the time it took to go in. When we got to the truck, everyone was dead quiet. We didn't even talk until we were a few miles down the road. Then, one by one, everyone started saying they'd seen or heard her too. Little things. One of the girls said she thought she saw a figure watching us while she was brushing her teeth that first night. Jake said he heard footsteps around the tent when we were asleep. Jess said she woke up twice thinking someone was standing outside. The weirdest part was that none of us could remember her face. We all saw her at least once, some of us twice, but if you asked any of us to describe her, it's like the details just slip away. We could remember the dark clothes, the long hair, the stillness, but not the face. It's like it was blurry. I've been hunting and camping my whole life, but after that trip, I can't go into the woods at night anymore. Even now, years later, if I'm driving past a stretch of forest and the trees get too thick, I still find myself checking the shadows for movement. Whoever, or whatever, she was, I hope I never see her again. I work as a counselor at a summer camp, tucked deep in the woods of Southern California. The kind of place where your phone loses signal 5 miles before the front gate, and at night, the only sounds you hear are wind through the trees and the distant call of coyotes. The camp's surrounded by dense forest and hills, with trails that twist for miles and patches of silence so complete, it feels like the world just stops breathing. Most nights are peaceful. You might hear the usual stuff: deer crunching through brush, a fox slipping past, maybe a coyote yipping at the moon. Every once in a while, a mountain lion wanders near. The staff tells us not to panic if we see eyes glowing out there. Just keep calm and back away. But even without the animals, the place has this strange spiritual feel to it. There are old half-collapsed stone structures along one trail, weird carvings on trees that nobody can trace, and a few cabins the directors never assign anymore because they're too far from the main camp. We joke that those are the haunted ones. It was mid-July when this happened. Hot days, cool nights, stars clear enough to see the Milky Way. I just finished lights out with my cabin and stepped outside to talk with another counselor, Mark, before turning in. It was quiet except for crickets and the low hum of the forest. Then out of nowhere, we hear screaming and footsteps pounding up the dirt path. My friend Sadie comes sprinting toward us with her entire cabin behind her, 12 teenage girls, all dressed in black, eyes wide, breathing hard. They look terrified. Sadie yells something about a ghost, says she'll meet me back at my cabin once the girls are settled. Then she and her kids disappear toward the bunkhouses. Now, Sadie's not the type to scare easy. She's one of those calm, outdoorsy types who handles everything like she's been through worse. Seeing her genuinely shaken was what got me. About half an hour later, she comes back, still pale, flashlight in hand. She tells me she'd taken her campers on a ninja night hike, something she did every summer. Have the girls wear black, sneak through the woods, whisper, practice moving quietly. Everything was fine until they reached one of the older trails that cuts close to the ridge. There's a stretch there where the trees crowd in so tight you barely see moonlight. That's when they heard it. At first, it sounded like a child calling for help. Faint, far off. Just a single help drifting through the trees. Sadie thought maybe it was another cabin or some prank from the boys' side of camp. But then it came again. Same voice, same word, but warped, like it was echoing from a long tunnel. The girls froze. The next time it called, it sounded wrong. Not like a person, not even close. It still said help, but drawn out, like something was trying to imitate the sound of a child and failing. She said it turned metallic, distorted, like static wrapped around a scream. That's when they bolted. I probably should have told her to leave it alone, but we're counselors, right? If there's even a chance some kid's out there, we're supposed to check. So we grabbed flashlights and went back up the trail. The woods were dead quiet now. No insects, no wind. Just our boots crunching on the dirt and our lights bouncing off tree trunks. We reached the spot where she said they'd heard it, and right as we stopped, we heard something again. It wasn't faint this time. It echoed through the hills, a drawn-out wail that started like a cry for help and twisted mid-sound into something animal and broken. It didn't seem to come from any one direction. It was everywhere, behind us, above us, across the ridge. The forest swallowed it up and threw it back from every side. Sadie looked at me, her face white, and I swear for a second I thought she was about to cry. The sound came again, sharper and closer. The hair on my arm stood straight up. Whatever it wasn't a person. We ran. No plan, no talking, just pure instinct. The second we saw the camp lights through the trees, we didn't stop until we hit the main clearing. We told everyone who'd listen, other counselors, staff still awake, even the maintenance guy who just laughed and said, "Probably a bobcat." We didn't buy it. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made me jump. I kept thinking about that sound, how it started as a kid's voice, almost human, then twisted into something else, something that didn't belong in the woods or anywhere near it. The next morning, the camp director called a meeting. Everyone gathered in the dining hall while he stood up front, trying not to smile too much. He told us to remind our campers not to panic if they heard strange noises at night. Apparently, bobcats in the area make a high-pitched scream that sounds like a woman, or sometimes a child, calling for help. Of course, that explanation made sense. It had to. Everyone laughed it off, teasing us the rest of the week, saying things like, "Watch out for the ghost bobcat." Sadie took it well, but she never went on another night hike after that. Still, I've heard bobcats before, even since then. They scream loud, sure, but that night it wasn't just a sound. It felt intentional, like it wanted us to follow. The way it echoed, the way it changed, the way it seemed to come from the whole mountain at once. I don't know. Maybe it was just an animal, maybe it wasn't. But every summer when I go back, I make sure to stay inside once the woods go quiet. I used to live in a cabin outside a town so small you could blink and miss it. It had maybe 200 people total. I worked online, liked the quiet, and rented cheap. The cabin sat back in the woods, close enough to the highway that you could hear trucks groaning up the hill at night. It was peaceful in the beginning. One afternoon I was walking my dog when 2 gunshots went off somewhere past the trees. Close, but not right on top of us. It was a hunting area, so I didn't think much of it. The dog flinched. I waited a few seconds, then we kept going. That kind of noise happens sometimes out there. A couple of days later, a pickup pulled into my drive. I didn't know anyone around, so a stranger stopping by felt strange right away. The man waved me over and said he was my neighbor. Out there, neighbor could mean someone living half a kilometer away or more. He asked if I'd heard the shots. I said yeah. He nodded and said his neighbor had been taking pot shots at his house over a land dispute. Didn't ask me to be a witness, didn't say he'd called police, Just wanted to know if I'd heard. It felt off, like he was testing something. My dog was pawing at the ground when the guy suddenly walked over, calling her like he already knew her name. She's friendly but cautious, and she froze, watching him. He crouched, held his hand out, then just grabbed her by the collar and flipped her onto her back like he was trying to show off. She yelped and tried to squirm away. I told him to stop. He looked up and smiled, like it was some kind of lesson. "She just needs to learn who's boss," he said, patting her as she slipped away behind me. Then he stood and asked if I had any guns. I said no. His grin widened a little, like that was the answer he wanted. "I'm a great dog trainer," he said, brushing off his jeans. Then he asked if I could mow his lawn sometime. He said it in this weird, formal way. "Please ensure you bring your dog." The way he said it made my stomach drop. It wasn't just odd. It sounded like he meant something by it. After he drove off, I realized I just told a stranger that I lived alone, heard gunfire, and had no weapon. And for all I knew, he could have been the one firing that gun. Maybe he was checking who'd heard it. That wasn't the smartest decision by me. He started showing up again. Sometimes he'd idle at the end of my driveway for a while, then slowly back away. Sometimes he'd text, asking why I hadn't come over, repeating that I should bring the dog. I'd given him my number that first day without thinking. He started calling too, switching from friendly to irritated, like he was keeping score. One day I mentioned him at the little store in town, just trying to sound casual. The owners looked at each other and said his name before I even finished. They told me he'd lost his job, his wife, and most of his mind. He drank too much and people avoided him. They said he had a bad temper and no reason to hold it back. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside felt directed at me. The cabin had windows on every wall except the bathroom. The forest was quiet, but the silence felt like pressure. I kept a knife on the nightstand and a can of bear spray by the bed, but it didn't make me feel any safer. He knew I had no gun. One night, my dog started growling. At first it was low, almost under her breath, then deeper. I didn't hear anything, but that didn't matter. Out there, silence didn't mean safety. Every room in that cabin had a window except the bathroom, and that suddenly felt important. I got up, grabbed the knife and the bear spray, and shut myself in there. I locked the door, sat on the cold floor, and just listened. Minutes dragged into hours. The dog stayed beside me, ears twitching at every creak of wood or rustle outside. I don't even remember falling asleep, but at some point I must have. I've never felt dread like that, just sitting there, waiting, and picturing that guy creeping through the trees with a shotgun, ready to make sure no one was left who might have heard what he did. It was pure, sick fear. I checked outside. No footprints I could be sure of, just flattened grass near the back of the cabin. Could have been a deer. Could have been anything. I kept telling myself that. But after that, every night felt like waiting for something. I'd catch myself checking the locks twice, moving furniture in front of the windows, even planning escape routes in my head. Fear does weird things. It makes you practical in the worst way. He left me voicemails saying things like, "Just wondering why you haven't stopped by," and "The grass is getting tall, thought your dog might like to run around." Every word made my skin crawl. I thought about calling the sheriff, but people said it took hours for them to come out that far. If he really was dangerous, reporting him might only make it worse. I figured invisibility was safer. Eventually, I broke the lease and moved a few kilometers away. The new place seemed better. Nice landlords, fenced yard, more open space. For a few days, I actually relaxed. Then I overheard them outside one morning, talking about my dog. Not like normal conversation, more like planning. They said they needed to make her part of their pack, so she'd want to stay with them. After that, they started hand-feeding her when they thought I wasn't looking, smiling too much, whispering to her through the fence. It was too familiar. The same weird, creeping feeling that people in that town didn't understand boundaries. So one morning while they were at the market, I loaded everything into my old van. It had no insurance and an expired license. I didn't care. I got the dog in the front seat and drove until the trees thinned out and the radio finally found stations again. I didn't even stop for gas until I hit a bigger town. I never went back. The whole place felt like something rotten hidden under pretty scenery. It's been a while since then, but I still wake up some nights at the same time, she growled. The sound of trucks on a highway still makes me freeze. I keep a flashlight by the bed even in the city. People say fear fades after you leave the place that caused it, but sometimes it just follows you. And every time my dog's ears twitch in her sleep, I remember sitting in that windowless bathroom, gripping a can of spray and a dull knife, wondering if someone was already standing outside the glass.